Hello everyone, this is Osama Rizvi coming to you from Primary Vision Network, and this is another episode of the One Day Macro View. As you can see, this time I'm filming it from not Lahore, Pakistan, but from Baku, Azerbaijan. You can see the Caspian behind me. It's quite an interesting time to be here because Azerbaijan and all the Central Asian countries are undergoing some important changes, and let's just say they're becoming more relevant to the global energy order. And when we talk about the global energy order, I think it is very important to discuss the impacts of renewable energy on the geopolitics. And that is what we're going to do in this installment, and also have a look at what's happening in terms of global economy related to recession and everything else. So let's dive in. As you can see in the first slide, it's about the importance or the growing significance or the growing focus of energy transition technologies, and how this growing significance will become really important for the demand. It will become one of the factors that will be driving the demand for critical minerals. For instance, just today, 66% of lithium goes into the energy sector, and it is expected, according to this report by IRENA, that by 2030, this share could rise to about 95 to 98%. And similarly, for graphite, dysprosium and cobalt, this can touch or go beyond 50%. And one of the implications for this in terms of geopolitics would be that the countries producing these, the materials where these are in reserves, high in reserves, they would come into the focus. And you can see, unfortunately, a lot of sort of geopolitical activity there, in not mainly positive. There can be power grabs, there can be some unrest as well, as we have seen in the case of oil. So that's really one of the main implications of the geopolitics of renewables. And when we talk about the supply side, you can see that it has a highly concentrated supply side. So some minerals like platinum, cobalt, graphite, and nickel. For instance, DRC, the Democratic Republic of Congo, it's responsible for 70% of the cobalt produced around the world. China is for dysprosium, 50%. Similarly, China, as we will see in the next slide, it's quite important in it. But it's not only China, there are other countries as well: Latin America, Indonesia, and Peru, for instance. And what's problematic in is that the more concentrated this supply is, the more susceptible or prone it is to crisis in the times of uncertainty. Let's say there is some local militant group that has taken over the country's political spectrum, that can result into a high amount of prices. And all of this discussion is also very relevant to the recent developments in terms of the renewal of the trade war that we talked about in the last episode. So concentration of any material is not always welcomed by the global business community, especially. And when we talk about concentration, China comes to the picture as well. More than 50% of the global refined capacity of graphite, cobalt, lithium, manganese, all really important, are in China. You can see I've highlighted it. There are other materials as well, copper, so lithium, nickel. What's important in this is to notice that these are just a few minerals. If we talk about other minerals that are important to the global economy, we talked about the rare earth elements, the supply of it, and also the refined capacity of it, that is also concentrated in China. And as I discussed in a show recently for Ashok, that this can result into, in 1970s, we had OPEC weaponizing oil, and now we have Russia weaponizing gas. We can also see this also opens up the possibility of China or other countries, an alliance of countries, weaponizing rare earth elements as the global economy gets more sophisticated. Another important slide which talked about that how the whole perspective or the context of fossil fuels and critical materials are different. So there were, in 2021, large quantities of fossil fuels were mined. However, when we compare it with the critical materials that we've just spoken about, that was only 10 million tons, which, by the way, is nothing as compared to 15 billion tons of fossil fuels that were extracted in the same year. Similarly, it generates huge rents and huge profits. We know about the Dutch disease and everything. So fossil fuel has this sort of it can be a positive and a negative as well. However, in terms of the critical materials, we still have to see that sort of, they aren't any much lucrative as compared to the fossil fuels. Similarly, the energy security risk is there in terms of fossil fuels, and then there is this energy transition risk. We can always imagine as alliance of countries that might not be willing to comply by the growing debate or growing efforts to decarbonize the world, because they have other pressing issues such as food, such as agriculture, such as livelihoods of people associated with the oil and gas sector. So these can spill over into the other domains, such as policy making, such as politics, such as they can become part of the different campaigns of different politicians. So human agency also comes into the play. So that was very important. So I think this report, it's quite a detailed report, and I've also mentioned the source from where I've taken these certain highlights. I think it's very important to read that report because it really speaks to a very important issue. And speaking of, when we speak about bigger picture issues, when we speak of significant matters that is going to shape the world moving forward in the 10 to 15 or 50 year span, I think renewables are going to be one of them. And everything has a political economy. Similarly, everything has a geopolitics associated to it as well. And this just gives us a brief picture of what might be expected in this regard. Now, something regarding the global economy. We see that this was a very interesting chart by Ryan Levend. He posted this on LinkedIn in his post, and I thought this speaks to the recent debate, because there has been a lot of confusion whether inflation is reduced down, but also it is only that the pace of inflation is reduced down, but the inflation is still at least 100% higher than the official Fed's target of 2%. So one of the things that people who do not believe that we'll have a hard landing or we'll avoid a recession, they put forth the argument of strong consumer side. But you can see, as the savings that were accumulated during COVID-19, they are now going down gradually. And it would be interesting to notice how this pans out in the coming months, in the coming economic data, because the job market has already started showing signs of a slowdown as compared to its peak. So might be possible that the consumer side also faces the same issue. Talking about different economists who do not believe that, who believe that we're out of the woods. Steve Hanke is one of them. He believes that inflation is now history, and he sees that United States will, the Fed will very soon stop hiking interest rates. That might be a possibility, but only temporary. And it also doesn't mean, if inflation isn't there, it also doesn't mean that there won't be a recession. So Paul Krugman has said that we should not worry about a recession, but I think the very fact that inflation is reducing, and also Mark Tresonos spoke about it in one of the econ segments where he shows how global manufacturing has slowed down. All of this puts together a neat picture where we see that the global economic activity is falling, and there might be a recession underway. That's all from today. As I was traveling, I couldn't make the Monday macro the market sentiment tracker chart, but I'll do it next week. Thank you so much for watching, and see you all next week.